Technical problem. Oh, we're good. So, welcome back. I'm happy that after summer break, Christmas it was first big break, another one is summer, we could continue to reflect about Eastern Christian theology, spirituality and liturgy. And I would like that we will start very important topic, I think. I consider it as important, and the name of it is icon, generally, an icon. And it's impossible to imagine Eastern Christian tradition. We are part of this Byzantine, because there are many Eastern traditions. So, but it's impossible to imagine our tradition without icon. Every temple where we enter, Eastern Christian temple, we see icons. They're beautiful, and it's not only iconostasis that you could see behind me, that is this face of our churches usually when someone enters and try to see altar. The first that could see is iconostasis. And we will speak also about this, but many icons of Jesus Christ, Mary, Theotokos, Mother of God, different saints. And we still live in interesting time when we have to discuss and defend our tradition, our icons. And many of us that belong to this tradition don't understand and cannot do this because they don't have enough knowledge to say why we have icons, why they are so important for us, and what we can answer to this aggressive Protestant Christians that attack us, that we create some, that we keep some pagan elements in our church, that we worship images, that we pagans. Church already answered them, and we continue to do this, but I would like that we will touch this topic for bring some understanding, some knowledge, and some awareness of this meaning of an icon in our tradition. And I don't want to, do this very fast. I think we could do this step by step, reflecting. And we will start today with Old Testament, with beginning, with foundation. But after, I also would like, say what will expect us. I would like to speak about history. I would like to speak about, of course, theology. I would like to speak about ecumenical councils that said also something about icons. And I would like to speak about something that we meet every day when we come in our church, for example, try to reflect about symbols of icon, meanings of colors, different elements. Maybe in the end we could dedicate one meeting, one conference to, I don't know, to some very important icon, trying to, show this, show and understand the password of icon, this hidden meaning in different elements. So it won't be very fast. I think it will take few meetings, but if you're interested, to have this knowledge, to understand, I believe that it could help you more deeper live your liturgical life if you understand meaning of icon and the language of icon. So first, what is it icon? Its terminology. It could be translated in English literally as image. But in our tradition we use icon because icon in Old Greek is image. In modern Greek is icona. Actually, in Church Slavonic and in different Slavic languages, we say icona. It also we follow Greek. Icona. Icon, it's more close to this English icon. And it's image. So, why we know about images? And we have to go in Old Testament because the part of Revelation, that one of the commandments from God that he shared to his people through Moses was about icon, about image. The first very important quote that will be foundation of theology of image in Old Testament and will play very important role also in the history of the church is Exodus chapter 20:6. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. You shall have no other gods before me. And now be attentive. You shall not make for yourself a graven image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above or that is in earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them or serve them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children to the third and the fourth generation of those who hate me, but showing mercy to thousands of those who love me and keep my commandments. So there is commandment. I am your God. No gods, only me. But also there is like a comment. What does it mean? It means that you will serve only to me, you will worship only to me, and you shall not make images. Images of me, different images, and also images of everything that is heaven, earth, and water, but in connection with God. No images of God, and no worship to these images. So, looks like a contradiction. We say that we have icons, and here the strong word of God. No. No images. No worship to images. And we start our journey from this. Because in Old Testament, God didn't give to people of Israel permission to create his image. Why? So reflect that we're in context of total paganism all around. And every tribe, every nation, every city, every town, every king, they all have own gods. Local gods or gods responsible for something. For fishing, for traveling in water, for harvest, for hunting, whatever. For every aspect of human life, and also for territories. For families, some families had their family gods and they worshiped to them. And they always had images of them, different images. And here we have revolution with monotheistic revelation. One God. And if you read attentively Old Testament, you will see that first, God appears like God of Israel. So there are different gods. Gods of this people, gods of that people, gods of that village, gods of this town. And this God is God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Israel. And after happens some transformation in conscience, some progression and understanding of this revelation, that God is not only God of Israel, that He is only one God. Only one. And looks like these people needed this time for first accept God like their own God, and not God of Egyptians, I don't know, Hananians or whatever. But after they did this step to understanding that not that He is only our God, He is only one God, only one, and all another, they are not gods. And this commandment is very important because it introduced some universal category of God. He's not local, He's not responsible for some specific business or location or action or season or whatever. He is beyond all of this. He is creator of all of this. And now here we have this best example, if you remember the last year, of negative theology. Why I said in that moment that is very important. Without this you won't understand nothing in future, and we have to speak about this. Here we have this apophatic theology, negative theology. You cannot imagine me, say God. You cannot compare me with a bird, with an animal, with some creature, because I am not like this. I am not a God with small g. I am God with capital G. I am creator of all of this. I am more that you can understand, that you can comprehend. I am much bigger that you could keep in your hands. I am much bigger that you can keep in your mind. Your idea, your conception about me cannot keep me inside. I am beyond all of this. So don't do image of me, because it's not me. Don't do this. And we can see in this revelation of God to the world through Israel that it was always something mysterious. Do you remember revelation of Mount Sinai? Fire, smoke, and voice was speaking to all of this, but God didn't appear. God didn't appear. They didn't see nothing. They were scared to approach the mount. They sent Moses, go you, because we were afraid. It's why prophet was so important, because he took all the risk to meet God. This, unknown, almighty, omnipotent creature that this world cannot accept, that is beyond of this. And it was something very mysterious, something very mystical. Spiritual appeared in material with different manifestation, but God never appeared. And do you remember the temple of Jerusalem? First the tabernacle and temple. The Holy of Holies had, how you say it, curtain? Do I pronounce this good? Veil. Veil is better. Veil. Veil. Curtain. Veil. You understand me? So this cover. It also was sign that something very holy is behind of this. And only the first priest could enter there once a year for do his sacrifice of incense. And if you go to Judaic text, you can discover that they had one period of time. Of course, Israel was on different levels of spirituality. It was not always in the same way, of course. and they had two temples. First, and this temple was destroyed, and the second, and now they don't have it. So, in the time of first temple, when Old Testament traditions say that holiness of Israel was much better than in time of second temple, the first priest entered only once a year there for do his sacrifice for people of Israel, and he was fasting many days before for his sins and for his people, and it was like preparation to enter an open space, for. Do you remember who was the first who jumped to the moon?
Neil Armstrong.
Armstrong, yeah. It was something unknown, it's like enter in spiritual reality, because this is Holy of Holies. And they were scary to die, because if you're not worthy, they remember the story of sons of Aaron, that they were priests, first ordained priest with his father, and they were not worthy, and fire from altar, this fire from spiritual world burned them. They died because they unclean touched clean. They sinful experienced, holiness, and it killed them. You understand? But what was approach of this Old Testament? Holy of Holies. It's like entering open space. You have to do many trainings. You have to adapt yourself to all these pressures and challenges that you could meet when you enter in open space. Your suit. Spacemen should be ready. I don't know, or something like this. Like some pilot that experience that check some new model of airplane and experiences some great pressure, whatever. It's something unknown and dangerous. If you're not ready, you will die. And so the sources of Old Testament tradition, they say that priest was entering there with incense. Incense is sacrifice. It's another very deep thing that someday we will speak. We incense a lot, and it's rooted in Old Testament. It's also sacrifice to God, aroma that lives up to God. It's another deep symbol. And he had the, help me with the word, he had like connection, like a line to his leg.
Oh, yeah.
Rope, thank you. Because if he would die there because of his sinfulness, people could pull him out from Holy of Holies. Thank you for the word rope. Rope, okay. You understand? So, God is outside of this world. This world cannot keep it because cannot keep him. He is also not word that could express the nature of God. It's our try to do this. So negative theology, God is beyond understanding. God is beyond imagination. So you live among pagans that have own gods. They have their images. With pagans, it's also not so easy. Please don't consider them like very primitive, because usually there are some very primitive pagan traditions, but many of them are not primitive. They didn't consider, a stone as their god. They also believe that the stone is a representation. It's like visible appearance. It's like a container, for presence of this spiritual being among them. If you study deeper different pagan religions. For example, I had deal a little bit with this Scandinavic and with Slavic, that is very, very similar. It's like two cousins with different names, but it's very similar by ideas, by conception. They had these idols in their temples, in their villages. They worshipped to them, but they didn't believe that this piece of wood is God. No. God is present by this piece of wood. It's his appearance, it's his manifestation. But they also considered, that gods are spiritual beings. They are spiritual. They are not material. In this case, God tries to, take out Israel from this world, pagan world, and he said, I'm much bigger than you can imagine. So don't do images and don't worship to them. Next quote that is very similar is book of Deuteronomy. It's 4th chapter, 15-19. It's very similar, it's the same, and if you read Old Testament, you know that the book of Deuteronomy, it's repeating of the law. Before enter in promised land, Moses knew that he won't be able to enter. I hope you know that he spent 40 years there traveling with his people, but after God said him, you won't enter in promised land. And he died before. They entered, led by his disciple. Thank you, yes. So, and before enter, Moses spent with them days and days and days repeating the law. So you got the law from God. We try to study this and live according to this law 40 years in the desert. And now let's do the last lesson. We will repeat everything that God said to us. And Deuteronomy, if you read it, it's repeating of the law. And sometimes it's much easy to understand the revelation of Old Testament, because in another books is spread it, and it's very difficult, different sections that don't touch us too much, slaves, different categories of social life. But Deuteronomy, it's like summary. It's more important that they needed to remember. So, you saw no form at all on the day the Lord spoke to you at Horeb from the midst of the fire. Now we have spoken about this now. Be strictly on your guard, therefore, not to degrade yourselves by fashioning an idol to represent any figure, whether it be the form of a man, of a woman, of any animal on the earth, of any bird that flies in the sky, of anything that crawls on the ground, of any fish in the waters under the earth. And when you look up to the heavens and behold the sun or the moon or any star among the heavenly host, do not be led astray into adoring them and serving them. So the same, be attentive, not be pagans, don't create images, and don't worship to images. And here mentioned moon and sun. In the first quote, Exodus, no moon and sun. Probably in that moment they didn't know about cults of sun and moon, but after they met them and they decided to introduce also these words, maybe, I don't know, I'm not sure, for, be sure that people understand in details everything. So, two things: not create image of God and not worship to this image. And also we have this list of different images: man, woman, bird, different creatures, star, moon, whatever. The prohibition. So how we can live with this? No image, no worship, but if you go deeper, you will see that God in his revelation continued to manifest himself to people. Most of all through prophets. This was the way of revelation. God appeared to prophets, and through prophets to people of Israel. Only Mount Sinai was this place where entire nation saw the manifestation of God. But in history it usually was through prophets. And what we meet in Old Testament, reading it in different books, and not only prophetic books, but also in books of Torah, first 5 books, that God manifests himself. God appears to prophets, to people of Israel. And for describe this manifestation, afters, I don't speak about one after, because there are many of them. Bible is not book created by one after, but it's created through centuries by many people, inspired by God. Even one book could have few afters, because it could be put together from different pieces from different ages. It's very difficult science, and I don't want to enter there. In simple way, we consider entire Bible like revelation of God, written down by a man inspired by Holy Spirit. So, to describe these manifestations of God, his appearances, afters, started to use images. How we can create tradition and share this tradition with another generations? I need to write down. So how I do this? Using my language. And when I say language, it's not only about verbal language. Think more, not so narrow. I live in this age, and I live in this generation. For example, we have different things in our culture that have deeper meanings and represent our culture in some way. For example, if I say fry meat in medieval, what does it mean? That people hungry, they want to eat, they fry meat. When I say fry meat now, or say it in another way, barbecue, what is it? It's about hungry? No, it's about social. And we have many icons, we have many images also in our modern culture. For example, when we say school bus is not only vehicle, yellow vehicle, it's a part of our culture. It's memory from childhood. It's some conception of childhood. When we say, I don't know, Yankee, how many ideas could come to your mind. And you know, when we say towers twins, yeah, that were destroyed. So it's not only buildings; it's some experience that we had, painful experience and glorious experience. Different things have much deeper meanings, and they also belong to our language. Do you understand me? It's not only language like grammar, like speaking language, but language of culture, of social life. The same was with authors of Bible. In every generation, they used this terminology, these symbols, and this language in which they lived, trying to express revelation of God. It was very difficult because, you know, you could imagine spiritual revelation to prophet. God appeared to prophet and spoke with him, and probably it was something so mystical that prophet even could not express it by his own words, because it was on another level, not on level of bodily senses, but something spiritual and unknown. But there is message from God, and this prophet has to bring this message to people. So this is the headache, I would say, to transfer spiritual experience in human words and images and bring it to people. And now what we have? We have the beginning of positive theology, cataphatic theology. Or if you wish, I could say another word, we have beginning of allegory here. Because revelation should be expressed in human words, in human languages, in human images, and be understood by people living in specific culture and specific time. Okay? So, there is prohibition to create image in worship, but images started to appear. I will be slow because it's not so easy, and it was very long process. First, I will offer you a few examples to let you understand. So, for example, Deuteronomy, there is prohibition to create image of God as a man and woman, because God is not a man and woman. But in many pages of Bible, we could find image of God's hand. Exodus 13:16. With a strong hand the Lord brought us out of Egypt. Exodus 15:6. Your right hand, O Lord, magnificent in power, your right hand, O Lord, has shattered the enemy. Exodus 15:12. When you stretched out your right hand, the earth swallowed them. Simple question, does God have a hand? So, right hand, so it means, so he's not octopus. If there is right hand, should be left hand. And what we see image of man. Not image of man, but the author would say, I didn't describe God as a man. I only tried to express the action of God using human language. language of culture. I said, you with your right hand brought us out from Egypt. You with your hand, strong hand, destroy our enemies. And what is it? This is positive theology, cataphatic theology. We introduce images of our world for describe that cannot be described. We use material for express spiritual. We use visible for express invisible. So God does not have hands, but material hands. But his action, his manifestation in the world is described and expressed with this allegory, right hand or strong hand. Psalm 18:15. The right hand of the Lord has struck with power. The right hand of the Lord is exalted. You see, it's not only Exodus, it's Psalms, Prophet Isaiah 48:13. Yes, my hand laid the foundations of the earth. My right hand spread out the heavens, say God. And if you read attentively, you can find many places where I cannot offer you only these quotes about hands, because there are another. But I only wanted to show you that it's not only one, there are many of them in different books. You can find it through whole Old Testament. Some technical problem with sound. Maybe to add, it's not our topic, but this idea of hand of God will have great development. It will have great theology, because later even it's Old Testament tradition that New Testament and Christianity will inherit. Right hand, according to this conception, will represent the mercy and kindness of God, and the left hand, justice and punishment. Do you remember when Christ, we read this gospel Sunday before Great Lent, if I'm good with my memory, about last judgment, when King divides people like pastor, sheep and goats, on the right and on the left. Right, it's enter in my glory, enter in my mercy and love, and left, it's justice, it's judgment. So, and this is the way that God rules the universe with two hands, say this theology, by justice, that is balance, and mercy, that is about justice, that is something more. Like I said, it was transferred in New Testament, and it also rooted in human language. Do you remember? When I say a language, I mean culture with own images, not only verbal. Because kings have their advisors, and sometimes the position close to the throne of king showed the point of view of advisor about some decision of king, or never mind, generally they could have choice, to belong to this decision of king or to some another, and they were choosing the place on the right and on the left sometimes. So okay, let's go, because it's more interesting. It goes more and more in images. we understood that God is not octopus because he has right hand, means there should be left hand. But God also has fingers. This is interesting. Exodus 31:18. When the Lord had finished speaking to Moses on Mount Sinai, he gave him the 2 tablets of the commandments, the stone tablets inscribed by God's own finger. You see? Definitely not octopus. It's human hand. He, God, made commandments on 2 tablets of the stone tablets by his own finger. If we try to laterally imagine this, it's some kind of madness, you know, finger from heaven, from cloud, goes out and writes something on tablets, I don't know, by fire, some laser, I don't know. But what author intended to say us? That tablets, stone tablets with commandments, are not creation of Moses. He did not make them on the top of the mount. He accepted them from God. Made by God. And after uses allegory. He says, by God's own finger. What we have here? Another image of God. After didn't say that God is human, that he is a man, but he describes action of God using these images of human body, hand, finger. Deuteronomy 9:10. Till the Lord gave me the 2 tablets of stone inscribed by God's own finger. You remember Moses repeats the law before people of Israel enter in promised land, and he said that God gave me these tablets, and it was done inscribed by God's own finger, not mine, God's own finger. It's not enough. What about lips or mouth? Isaiah 45, chapter 40, the verse 5. Then the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all mankind shall see it together, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken. Isaiah 62, verse 2. You shall be called by a new name, pronounced by the mouth of the Lord. Great. Lamentations 3:38. Except it proceeds from the mouth of the Most High, whether the thing be good or bad. So you see that there is development of this approach. It's not only, they tried for not seen once, how we say this, let's say hand of God. But it's not hand, it's only allegory. After, or let's say finger. Could you imagine Moses and I don't remember how many they were in the desert. There is number. Old Testament tradition brings the number of people Israel. They say that it was specific number. I could check it and say you next time. So thousands and thousands of people, slaves without education, slaves that became free, and Moises, only one that had education, because he grew up in the court of the Pharaoh. He had education as Egyptian prince, so with knowledge of all these mysteries, languages, whatever, philosophy, astrology, math, geometry, what they had at the time. Egypt was very developed civilization. And in front of him, thousands and thousands slaves that could not write their own name on the sand. And he's speaking with them, to them, about revelation of God. What language he can use for explain them? Their own, that they will understand. And here we have right hand, we have finger, we have lips or mouth. Human images. For us, that we already have all this intellectual inheritance, sometimes it's too difficult to keep this level of abstraction, speaking about God, without images. Even when we say, God say, it means that God speaks. It's already introduction of human categories, because we don't say that animals, they speak. We say speak only about humans, about people. And here we have this conflict between negative theology, God is beyond everything, don't try to imagine him, put this veil in Holy of Holies, and don't enter because you're not worthy, you cannot survive. Or when there is this mission of prophets to bring to people message of revelation, they speak in images using positive theology. In the same time, it's a conflict between apophatic and cataphatic theology, negative and positive, but in the same time, to these approaches, they are like complete each other. You know, like they cannot live without each other. If God is only an expressible being beyond understanding, so let's keep silence for everything. Try to come and experience, but probably you would die, because it's like, you know, exit an open space without suit. You will die. Or let's bring this high God a little bit down to our level, for bring us up to the level of this Most High. And here we have images. They appeared. Only for show you, we don't have time to finish everything that I plan to do, but in every case. So another few examples from different books. Like I said, we have hand, we have finger, we have mouth. You probably could find ear of God that listens our prayers, our laments. You can find Lord's arrow in Zacchaeus, Prophet Zacchaeus. Also, you can read in Prophet Zacchaeus, God shall sound the trumpet. This is very interesting, you know. Could you imagine God that sounds the trumpet? It's like some jazz band in heaven, God and trumpet. It's another meaning, it's another message, it's another allegory. Because only try, when you hear this, God sounds the trumpet. But you imagine someone playing on it. You cannot, it's what we see, because it's from our world. So, the Lord, this is the most famous. The Lord's throne is in heaven, says Psalm 11. I saw the Lord seated on the high and lofty throne, with the train of his garment filling the temple. This is prophetic vision. It's Isaiah 6th chapter, the verse 1. He saw God on his throne, and he saw like his vestments, garment, filled the temple. This is image of king, and it's the best image of God in Old Testament and in all times, the king. Why the conception of kingdom was so strong until modern time? Because people considered that order on earth is represented in the best represents in the best way order in heaven in conception of kingdom. That kingdom is the king, is the body of king, and king is the head of this body. So, like God is the king of universe, local king is the God for his kingdom. You understand me? It's like a shadow of invisible, invisible. And do you remember that anointing in Old Testament was for prophet, priest, and king? And if you remember that was time in Israel when they didn't have kings. Why? Because God was their king. God was their king. They had judges. Judges. Local representatives that help to adjust life to the will of God. But after they decided to have a king like another nations around, and if you remember that prophet, who was the prophet in the time? Samuel? Yeah. He tried to convince them that you don't need to do this because you're on higher level of development, social development, because your king is God. You don't need this shadow, this representative of invisible spiritual hierarchy, because God is already your king. But after they wanted, and God said, okay, let's give them king. And this was conception. People saw a king like was the highest power, authority in the state. And all people of kingdom, they were slaves, servants of this king. All, even most high and important nobles, they were servants of king. The same. So, God is king of whole universe. He has throne. He has his royal garment. But what is it? It's another allegory. It's another imagination. How to express the power and authority of God with images, with language of human world. So God, the King. And we see this many, how say it correctly in English, anthropomorphisms, no? Anthropomorphism.
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 Applying human characteristics to non.
Yes, it's Greek terminology. Anthropos, it's, I'm sorry if I pronounce it wrong. Anthropos, it's a man. Anthropomorphism, it's like applying human categories on divine level, trying to speak about God. And we have a lot of them. And this is beginning of an icon. This is the beginning. There is prohibition to do this, yes, but prophets, authors of Old Testament, they all the time trying not to describe God, but express in human language his invisible action, used a lot of images. Okay? And we will continue this conversation next time, because there are still many things to say, and we will be in Old Testament. Okay? Glory to Jesus Christ.
Glory to God.